All right, greetings. So, turn up the video speed. This question's been in my mind over the years for a number of years. I don't really actually have the answer, to tell you the truth. And it's one side we got the don't try till you're 35, and sometimes I look at that and wonder if that's just an insidious plan by the 1% to get you stuck. But on the other hand, let's say you were benevolent from the 1%. You come down to Prometheus fashion and you bring the information that people need to hear to be able to make structure their lives to make their lives better. And for the most part, most people, much like in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, they mock you, they throw stones at you for bringing what would actually make their lives better. So could you really blame the 1% for saying, screw it? If they want to be beasts of burden, why not? They're idiots. And then maybe some of the elitism has some natural causes for why it happened. Where am I going with this? Well, I'll explain. Freedom, Phil, like, subscribe. Let's get into it. And hey, turn up the video speed. One might wonder why I always say turn up the video speed, because I can make this video at this speed. God, Lord knows you can listen to it way faster, and your time is worth. So let's get into it. Sometimes, yeah, I look at don't try till you're 35, and I understand classically why that made sense, because a lot of times, yeah, a lot of people wouldn't take you seriously. And sometimes it reminds me of the unions. So I've got to basically do all the grunt work, all the hard work for some guy, be his little lackey for X amount of years before I can do the same thing that I'm already doing. And you want to prove why that's kind of BS. Why is it, as a person that has their own house, I can do all my plumbing, all my electric, all this myself. I can do it all and get it permitted. As long as it passes, we're good. Okay? So I can do all of that. And yet, if I want to be that guy doing it for a living, even if I can prove I have all the skills, I have to basically give up 4 years of my life. And this is the exact same thing in business, where they're like, well, we know you're good, Perkins, but don't get too high on yourself there. And then they end up nepotistically hiring, some guy that was some doof that was married to the guy's daughter, or the son that's a friggin' idiot. Like wrapped how many cars around trees. Yeah, bro, dad's got the money. So yeah, I could see where people will get absolutely disenchanted. And the other thing is that, and this is the same problem I've pointed out about my particular industry of trucking, like why is it I can't drive over state lines with an OTR truck until I'm 21? Why is it magically at 21 I'm now good enough? I get it's probably insurance reasons, but it's ridiculous. Like if I can join the military and take the gun and be like shooting somebody because you tell me that's the enemy over there, I can get shot at and they can shoot at me back and forth. That's okay, but I can't drive over state lines. It's an artificial barrier, just like when in HR departments, they say, well, was it bachelor's required, master's preferred. Translation, let's put all these artificial barriers on what could be a job that takes 6 weeks worth of training or 6 months. Like we could have it done much quicker, much faster, much more efficient, but they put these artificial barriers in front of you. So I can get why people get disenchanted. The problem is, in that time, much like for those 3 years from 18 to 21, most people will go out and screw up their lives. And so they leave you other options, but those other options, like going to college or trade school, they have all these extra costs. They take what should be an easy route that you can be able to get somewhere in life, and they make it purposely harder, so you will screw things up. You will be in debt. You will have children. Obviously, you will probably have a house that you can't barely afford. As where, if you go the other route that I've said many a times, retirement by 30 or 7 to 10 years, which, by the way, that's the forbidden phrase you're not allowed to post. Maybe you can post it, but I know if I post it, it gets yeeted instantly. Let's say I was a benevolent person from the upper crust, and I just gave you common sense wisdom and said, well, hey, man, like, for instance, when I say the trucking thing, obviously, no rent, no utilities. I live off next to nothing, so less than $5,000 a year. You're making $100K per year, and you're investing pretty much all of it. I don't care at what age you understand this. If you do it at 40, it would have been better if you did it at 30, and it'd be better if you'd done it at 20. Because, for instance, if you're doing investing with compound interest, we all know the longer you have it working for you, the better it does. And even with land and housing, say that those 2 lots I bought that are connected over in the West Coast, I bought for 50 grand. I could have probably got that for 15 to 20 grand back in my 20s. But nobody was really talking about that. Nobody was telling me when I was younger, hey man, if you just get like an RV and, let me give you the example. That lot that I have out there, those lots, I got access to the private beaches. When I say private, it's like a mud flat, plant a bunch of clams and stuff. Got naturally occurring oysters. Got our own public well there. And then between the HOA and the taxes, my rent to society, because HOA and taxes is like paying a little bit of rent in some way, is less than $60 a month. So can you go and get a month's worth of camping fee for less than $60 a month? Well, you did pay that 50 grand. Yeah, but I can go and sell it in the future if I ever wanted to. I can develop that property too. No one was telling me any of this when I was younger. And so at some certain point, it does seem a little insidious that there's a lot of knowledge that we literally don't tell people till they hit, what, 35 or 40? Oh, you're 35 or 40. You better start thinking about retirement planning. But if you had had the retirement planning thought out when you were, like you're introduced to it in elementary, barely, like the idea of compound interest. You just kind of put it there. Maybe even add it to the video games. Like the loot box requires you to answer a common sense question that could do you good in the future. And then and by the time you're in middle school and you're a genius at it by the end of middle school, so it's rock solid when you're in high school and you're already got a plan, you're already got it going. None of that happens in society. And that's why part of the reason I have such a bone to pick with a lot of the whole public school system. Lots of time wasted for kids. After X amount of years, these kids have a skull full of mush that's useless. Good enough to flip hamburgers or stock dollar store shelves. And it'd be one thing if the public school was actually free, but it's not. It's a daycare system that costs, in this particular state, over $9,000 per child per year. And then you go over to the state I grew up in, $17,000 per student per year times 13 years. If you took that much money and dumped it in the S&P, take that number and times it by 30 years. And take a look at how much money that is. So from the age you get them in there, they'd be like 30 years old and they'd have that much money. Yes. But if you say these things and you point out these basic truths, and I've dealt with this myself, and it is part of the reason that one might wonder, like when I say common borns, because most of you think in a common fashion. A very copycat, like my parents did this, I do this, or let's be honest, what is sold on the TV, on advertising and all this tells you how to think. It's like the music industry. Is this really music or is this what we're told to like? Like you look at some of the artists these days, some of them are really legitimately talented and some of them are just like this auto-tune disaster. And look, I get it, it's popular, but it's popular because it was shoved in your face 20,000 times. So the bad message, that truth be known, I'm going to be honest about this. People like the bad message more than they like the good message. Oh, wow, surprise. So eat your broccoli is unpopular and candy and ice cream is popular. Big fucking surprise. But you got to kind of look at that. When people reject what is a good message and they accept what is a bad, toxic, long-term slavery message, like you're going to suffer because of this, because of these choices, you got to wonder, if I was the 1%, would I just, one day you look at Prometheus, or thus spoke Zarathustra, but in this case, Prometheus. And you're thinking, am I going to go down there, do the right thing, and then inevitably chain to the mountain and have a bird pluck out my liver, or eat my liver out of my body, my self-regenerating body every day? Am I going to go down there? Am I going to put myself through that? Because I hate to say this, and I know a lot of you think, on high the rich live. But take a look at Steve Jobs. Oh, wait, he's dead. We all take a dirt nap eventually. And the one truly valuable thing, part of the reason I say turn up the video speed, is time. That's what you only got so much of. So if I was some, person on the upper echelons, whether it was first generational wealth or, hey, maybe your family was actually used their head and there was multi-generational wealth. They just managed it well, invested well, and they just lived off the dividends for generations because, they're smart. Whoa, man. It's a conspiracy when people are smart. And by the way, that sounds like some crap that you hear out of communism. You know how after the regime change, the revolution happens, they go out and kill off all the intellectuals? Because the intellectuals be the ones that would point out like, hey, this doesn't work. Or, hey, that's a bad idea. And people are like, but wait a minute, that person's smart. Maybe they're right. And then they start questioning. And you actually see this on social media as well, through moderation. You try to put out accurate information for people and it gets censored. It gets moderated out of existence. So you just have to put that in perspective, and you'd think at some certain point, let's just say after years of trying to improve the world, do something benevolent for the world. And I got to be honest, there is a certain truth. Does charity ever really help people? Well, charity that they have to work for, maybe. But in general, we've been trying to tackle the homelessness crisis. We've been trying to tackle feeding people crisis. And it turns out most people are still having the same problems. In fact, helping feed the problem, helping solve the problem has allowed more people to be that way. Yeah, I get why the 1% would look at the world and go, hey, yeah, screw it. These people want to be beasts of burden. Let's make money off of them. But I can't, on the other hand, sit there and look at the whole don't try till you're 35 thing as anything but insidious. Because, God, when you're young, that is the best time for you to have your act together. And that's also why when I see kids and they're just sitting there, and look, I get it because I was a video game kid too, and I see them just sitting there learning nothing. I get it. Have some time to play. But this idea that you send them to school, they waste how much time at school, they learn little of nothing, and then they come home and then they zonk out on a screen for X amount of hours, which, by the way, I do it too. So I'm not judging, I'm just saying what I'm observing. If you taught those kids how to be a plumber, an electrician, you taught them how to, drive a truck, you taught, okay, and how about something a little more high-minded? Why basic things? You taught them how to be someone who knew how to code. You taught them, they had some of their pre-courses to becoming a doctor or an engineer, the things the world needs. If they had those figured out when they were in their teens, how much better off would they be? But that's not fun. Nobody wants the broccoli. Everybody wants the cake and ice cream. Or maybe pie. I think, well, what do you think? Cake or pie? Maybe that's the real question in this conversation. But I've said enough. This is Freedom Phil. Like to subscribe. Y'all have a good one. And hey, always turn up the video speed. Because once again, I can say it at this speed. You can listen to it way faster. I listen to myself at 2 times the speed. Anyhow, bet the doggo wants to go out, so take it easy.